The German Shepherd had never barked inside the house, not once in 5 years. Until the morning she was alone with the toddler, and then he wouldn't stop. They thought he had finally broken. He hadn't. He was the only one who knew the back gate was open. Rochelle Lim was a civil engineer. She solved problems through structure and sequence and verifiable data. She had owned Steele for 5 years. A German Shepherd, she had trained herself to the point where the word bark was a command, not a behavior. He did not vocalize indoors without instruction. This was not an accident of temperament. This was 5 years of consistent handling by a person who understood that a command had to mean something every time it was given, or it meant nothing. She was proud of this. She had reason to be. Then on a Saturday morning in July, while Rochelle was upstairs with a migraine, and her husband Joel had left for a hardware run that was supposed to take 20 minutes, Steele started barking in the kitchen and could not be stopped. Her son, Matteo, was 20 months old. He was in the kitchen with Steele. She heard them through the ceiling, the bark, and then Matteo's laugh, and then the bark again. She came downstairs in stages, each step costing something. She found Steele standing at the back door, facing the dog door flap at the bottom, barking in the specific direction of the backyard. Matteo was standing 3 feet behind him, watching the performance with the full fascination of a toddler who has not yet encountered boredom. She gave Steele the quiet command. He looked at her and barked again. She gave it again with the hand signal, clearly the way she had given it 1,000 times. He looked at her and stepped forward and pressed his nose to the dog door flap and pushed it open and held it open, and then looked back at her. She had never seen him do this. She had never seen anything like this from him. She said quiet again. He let the flap close and pushed it open again and looked at her. Steele out. She pointed toward his bed in the corner of the kitchen. He moved to her hand instead of the bed and stood at her hip, nose toward the door. She felt unwell enough to be imprecise about everything, and she made the decision a person makes when they have a migraine and a toddler and a dog who has chosen this morning to forget 5 years of training. She opened the back door and sent him out. He went. He stood at the threshold of the back door and turned and looked at her, and she closed it. If you stay for stories about what animals sense, before we do, you are in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. She took Matteo back upstairs. She laid on the bed with him. She was asleep within 10 minutes. She woke up to Joel calling her name from downstairs, the specific quality of how he said it. That detail would stay with her. He wasn't angry. He wasn't panicked yet. He was making his voice very steady, the way men do when they're trying not to alarm their wives, and are succeeding at neither. The back gate was open. It had a self-latching mechanism that had been stiff for 2 weeks. Joel had been meaning to fix it. The gate opened onto the shared alleyway. The alleyway connected, at the far end, to the neighbor's unfenced yard which backed up to the retention pond. Matteo was not in the backyard. Joel found him 20 feet down the alleyway, heading toward the neighbor's yard, in the specific directed motion of a toddler who has found something interesting and is pursuing it. Steele was beside him, shoulder pressed against the boy's right side, moving at walking pace. Not running, not pulling, just present. The neighbor's yard had an unfenced retention pond. The alley to that yard was 60 feet of open path. Matteo had covered 20 feet. Steele had been beside him for every one of them. Joel picked up the boy, and Joel's voice broke, just once, the way voices break when the alternative to what happened is too close and too clear. He put Matteo against his chest, and Steele stopped walking and sat down in the alley and looked at Joel. Has your dog ever done something you couldn't make sense of until you understood what it was responding to? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. Rochelle came downstairs when Joel brought them in. She stood in the kitchen and listened to what he said and did not speak for a while. Then she looked at the back door. She thought about Steele at the dog flap. She thought about him holding it open with his nose. She thought about the word quiet and the hand signal and the way he had looked at her and barked again. She had given that command correctly 1,000 times. He had obeyed it correctly 1,000 times. He had chosen once, not to. He had made that choice deliberately, and she had responded by sending him out into the yard, where the gate that he had been trying to show her was already letting her sun through. She sat down on the kitchen floor. Steele walked to her and pushed his nose against her hand. She didn't say anything. She fixed the gate latch that afternoon, the one Joel had been meaning to fix for 2 weeks. She also called a pool safety consultant the following Monday about fencing for the retention pond access. And she retired the quiet command from her vocabulary permanently. Not because the command had failed, because the dog who had spent 5 years obeying it chose, once, at the exact right moment, to do something more important than be obedient. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. Subscribe so you never miss the next one. Steele slept outside Mateo's door that night, and every night after, not because Rochelle instructed him to, because he decided the door was his post, and nobody in that house was going to argue with him about that again.